I don't think it's a secret that young women today are woefully unprepared for the future when it comes to love and family life. They're very prepared, some might say overly prepared, for the marketplace. But work is just one part of life, and it's not even the best part, right? We know this. The best part of life is finding someone to love who loves you back and having a family. In fact, who you choose to marry and the quality of that marriage will have more effect on your happiness and well-being than anything else you do. And anyone who's been married for any length of time knows this to be true. If that is true, which it is, why then do we not prepare young people, women in particular, for this critical juncture in their lives? Why do we tell them to focus exclusively on work and to ignore the part about marriage and family? I think most of the people in this room know the answer to that. Because we live in a feminist culture that disparages men and marriage.
What's going on, everyone? It's Talks with Kenny here today, and welcome to Inconvenient Truths. Today's Inconvenient Truths is going to be about feminist culture. As you saw from the intro, I believe that the culture that we're currently having and the results of that culture, because that video I just showed you is 3 years old, right? And I forgot the lady's name. Let me see if I can find her name real quick. It's Suzanne Vinker. Hopefully I don't butcher that name. But what she highlights is something that I've been noticing for a long time, is that it seemed the results of feminist culture, it steers women towards misery in a way. It does. It makes you focus, like what she said in the intro, it makes you focus on your career more than your actual family life, your personal life, right? We see the stats. Women work less hours than men. Women take more vacation time than men. Women care more about their personal well-being more than they care about a career. But our culture today, and I believe all this dinks culture and why women want to not have children, is due to the results of this messaging that's been constantly pushed to women today. Are you a sink? The manifesto for the single income, no kids female. What's the function of a woman who's married yet childless? Better yet, what's the function of a woman who is single by volition, financially independent, and has no kids? Right? Even while still in my early 30s, I felt my comrades, fellow internet consumers, dipping into the tail end of the 20-something trend. Right? It's estranging themselves from a publication like Thought Catalog and BuzzFeed that coined the term. Much of the language is self-aggrandizing, pieces filled with blanket notions that doesn't hold weight. Sorry. These stories are digested and no longer fodder for self-fulfillment or gravitas for pragmatism or soulfulness. Their internet 20-somethings content has reached a saturation point, right? But nowadays, and this is 2014, this article was made in 2014. So now in 2020, what we're dealing with today, dinks, right? Now people want relationships, but they don't want to have any kids. And all I found is that the results of all the inconvenient truth about feminist culture is that it was meant to divide the sexes. It was a tool to kind of harm the institution of the family unit. And we're paying for it in droves today, men and women. But I want to point on to this next clip where she highlights the negative results of feminist culture. Let's take a look.
Over and over, she writes, my undergraduates tell me they try hard not to fall in love during college, imagining that would mess up their plans. End quote. And more, those plans do not include marriage. And yet we know that the vast majority will ultimately marry someday, and that marriage will be a far greater investment than their degree. I'm not disparaging anybody's education. I just want it kept in perspective. You can't switch out a spouse the way you can switch out a job. People try. Lord knows they try. And more than 70% of remarriages with children fail. It seems to me that's worth paying some close attention to getting it right the first time. That is why women need to be as intent, women and men, but I'm focusing in on women because they're the ones who are getting specifically the message not to do this, need to be as intentional about their love lives as they are about their professional lives. As I say, men do too, but as most of us know, women lead the charge when it comes to love and marriage. Who we choose to marry and how that marriage fares will be the axis upon which all other decisions are made. It totally governs your life once you get to that point. So why don't young women know this? Because they've been steeped in feminism since the day they were born.
And I agree. That's the truth. Like, especially if you're millennial, like I'm a zillennial, which means I'm born in 96. I was the last millennial born. And Gen Z women, you're seeing it. They're pushing back against this stuff now. And now we have 38-year-old women regret not having kids and says she was betrayed by feminism, which is where it goes back to the Huffington Post that I just showed you earlier before our clip, about how they push this messaging constantly to get women to just be a cog in some machine. Now this lady feels like, yo, I regret it. And I'm glad she's speaking out, because younger women need to be warned about the long-term ramifications for decisions that they make today. Women, you don't have all the time in the world to decide if you want marriage and family, or like, to me, y'all mature quick, so y'all got to make these decisions very quickly, what you want to decide on, and understand the full holistic ramifications for what you want. Right? And end of the day, if you volunteer, say, hey, I don't want I don't want to have no kids or whatever. Okay. But remember, y'all volunteer for this, because I think in our culture today, we have a lot of volunteers that pretending that they're victims. And that's what I can't really stand sometimes with some feminists, right? Because when people try to warn them back in the day, they didn't want to sit back and consider another perspective. No, they took it with dogmatic fiver or whatever. I forgot how to say the word. And they pushed back against it. They berated people that disagree with them. And people just say, okay, whatever. And then 10, 20 years later, when they're 38 years old, still single, don't know what happened, got 5 cats in their apartment, now they want to regret their decision. People learn too late. And I think that's a big problem that we have in our culture. That we are so hard-headed, so closed-minded, that we don't want to consider the contrarian view. But, I digress. So the next point, Suzanne's going to start talking about why a lot of women are not exposed to this counter argument that she has. And it has a lot to do with media, censorship. Sounds familiar? Let's take a look.
I talked about feminism with Tucker Carlson last month. I'm convinced he's the only media personality who understands the fallout of this movement and is willing to discuss it on national TV. And I do mean the only one, because in 20 years, I think he stood up here recently, didn't he? Yeah. In 20 years of doing what I do and going on media to try to talk about this issue, it's like, you have to knock down walls to be able to do it, and then when you get there, it's just a constant fight. There's no natural discussion about this, and this includes even Fox News, especially the women on Fox News. It hasn't always been fun, but it was great last month with Tucker. During that interview, he said, quote, "I don't think anything has changed our society more for the worse than feminism." And he's right, of course, but it was very refreshing to hear it said in the media. Feminism has indeed made women's lives, and by extension, men's and children's lives, immeasurably worse. According to a 2009 paper published by the National Bureau of Economic Research, quote, "As women have gained more freedom, more education, and more power, they have become less happy," end quote. When this study was released, countless articles and news reports inquired about the irony of it all. How is it possible that women could be less happy after having been liberated? In fact, it isn't surprising at all when you consider that women have been lied to for decades about what constitutes a happy life.
I agree. Right? They make you think, oh, all women must want a career. All women must be happy. But then when you go on social media and you see, the tradcon aesthetic or the traditional housewife, whatever, on social media, You see these same women, these same miserable women, condemning this stuff, trying to chastise women. Oh, you just a slave and all this. Like they without like overtly, they demean, they shame women to not be housewives, even if that's what the woman actually want. Because at the end of the day, feminists, they always claim that they're about choice, but it's a passive aggressive way that they instantiate it. Their words say, "Oh, it's your choice," but their actions show, "Oh, I'm gonna look down on you. I'm gonna put you down. Oh, you're not important. I'm gonna assume you're lazy. Or that you don't do nothing in the house." It baffles me that through our culture, at the end of the day, like I said, culture is a system of incentives. We have been incentivizing women to go down this path, even though statistically it doesn't make them happy. Right? There's a stat out there that liberal women are the least happiest women in America, at least, or in the Western world. And I always argue, who's more likely to be a feminist, a liberal or a conservative woman? A liberal. So I can make the argument you're essentially, this culture, this feminist culture, the inconvenient truth about feminist culture is that it steers most women to misery, towards unhappiness, right? Because this is what feminism is. End of the day, feminism is telling women what path they should pick. Hey, you should be a career woman, high power, be like a man, because we don't respect femininity. That is the inconvenient truth with feminism. No one wants to acknowledge this. No one wants to have the argument, the conversation. Women's unhappiness has been rising since they got feminism. Now there's some pushback. Gen Z women are like, "Oh, I don't want to work. Who do that?" I have the clips, but I digress. Let's get into the final clip, and then I'll wrap up the inconvenient truths with feminist culture after the clip. Let's take a look.
Academic and elite feminists who reside in our universities, in the media, in politics, and in Hollywood have told women all kinds of things that just aren't true. Things that make women, and by extension, men and children, very unhappy. Like the idea that women don't need a man, and that children don't need a father. Or that men and women must make the same life choices in order to be deemed equal. Or that staying home to raise a family is less important, valuable, or satisfying than earning a living. These are all lies. Unfortunately, women listened, and men followed, as they do. And here's what we have to show for it. Number one, the complete and utter breakdown of marriage. Over the past 40 years, America has witnessed a meteoric rise in cohabitation, creating a bona fide shack-up culture. Many women can't find economically attractive husbands with whom to settle down to start a family. And father-absent homes are rampant because of unilateral divorce initiated largely by women, around 70%. For no other reason than she's just not happy. And here's a really recent statistic that's very telling. A full half of all 18 to 34-year-olds today, half, are currently unpartnered. Not just not married, but no romantic relationship at all. Half, between 18 and 34. Now, if it had been 18 and 24, you'd be like, okay, 18 and 34? Number two, a persistent and relentless gender war. And just FYI, I didn't bring my book with me, silly me. I do have a recent book out. It's called Women Who Win at Love. And the idea for that particular book is counteracting everything I'm talking about here today by giving young women a path that is a non-feminist path, a countercultural path for which to map out their lives so that they actually have happy lives.
Yeah, that's the inconvenient truth about feminist culture is that it cannot replace meaning in your life, women, right? And I'll say that for men because there's male feminists too. And the approach the remedies that it recommend for women and men, it does worse. Our society is worse for it. focus on your career. Okay, even though there's a time limit on when you will have a window to have children and healthy children, if you want to add that caveat into it. There's stats out there that the more money a man makes, the less the less that money becomes less. Money becomes less of a consideration when he's choosing a partner, while it's the opposite for women. The more money a woman makes, the more money comes into consideration for a dating partner. She mentioned this in one of the previous clips where she was talking about economically attractive men, right? So in a way, you can even say that feminism has pushed women into an income bracket where they no longer will date most men, right? Because in most marriages, majority of marriages, the man is still the breadwinner in those marriages. Those are the facts. But this is the path that feminism is leading women down, women down to like almost a dead end. So then they try to cope and they put this dink stuff out, dual income stuff out, the single income, no kids stuff out, to glamorize this stuff, to get the social media fame off this stuff. And I'm starting to thinking it's part of a bigger agenda that I don't know who's behind it. Globalists, they want Western society to have less kids, so there's more space for immigration. I don't know what's the end goal with all this stuff, but I do know one thing. On a personal level, for most women, feminism is not the answer. It doesn't make you a good partner. It doesn't incentivize women to have good relationships with men, because obviously feminism teaches women to disparage men, treat men like garbage, trash. All you have to do is go on TikTok. You'll see, they'll tell you themselves. And that's the inconvenient truths. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I really would like to hear you guys, your thoughts on feminist culture. Do you believe it lived long enough to become the villain? Let me hear your thoughts in the comment section below. I really would like to hear it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I really do appreciate you guys for watching to the end of the video, and I'll catch you guys on the next Inconvenient Truths. Peace.